So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Mashiach laid waste for many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu the prophet, it is extremely important reading sections of the 60th chapter, because it gives you a portion of understanding of the spring feast found in Vaikra, and also the autumn feast, explaining then Yom Kippur and the final combat. As it was explained before, many layers of these instructions, they are related with tabernacling and a layer regarding trade. For instance, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has provided us with information from the prophets where you can find in a specific way sections of the restoration period of the tabernacle in areas of restoration of trade. There are steps of formation. For instance, in Daniel, the 11th chapter, you find then a couple of situations, the prophecies themselves, and also you find the reflected prophecies. So then the reason why there is then a set of reflected prophecies is because Daniel spoke of a nation from the east, and we understand this particular prophecy centuries after Daniel has already taken place. However, because of the Yom Kippur and the restoration period, the geographical area has expanded. However, it is yet east later on than speaking of the country of China, or the kingdom of China coming from the east. As we understand, the largest army in the world is Chinese. So then, because we can identify a couple of events under the same prophecy, we understand the steps of formation of the first section, the prophecies themselves already taking place, and you find then an identifier that later on you then begin your quest rescuing these prophecies from Revelation, and Revelation obviously is linked with Daniel when we make a reference of the restoration period, and also related with tabernacling and trade. So, there is a piece of information that came out in a very important and reliable newspaper from Great Britain. The name is the Bricks Post. Very concise paper in the form of computerized digital format. And it states Beijing and Moscow began South China Sea maneuvers. So then this particular situation is already given parts, bits and pieces of what's going on then in Daniel 11. Daniel 11 explains of a system that's going to be weakened. It's not going to be obsolete. It's going to be weakened. Or then a system rejected. But the rejection in Hebrew simply means, in the system sense, you only reject a system when it's not profitable. It's not a situation that you reject a system itself, it's because of the profitability. So this is what we are understanding as far as the holy instructions are concerned. You read it then in Daniel 11, This situation regarding the economy of the United States, that became obviously extremely weakened because of the economics, and you begin then your quest understanding the kingdom of the north, then later on coming with much equipment. Now in scripture language, when you read equipment, means military equipment. You can do any search you want explaining from the time of the restoration, the time of the end, the combat of the end, and the prelude until the coming of the Yom Kippur. Any kind of equipment is spoken of in a layer of combat is military. So then, you find the Soviet Union has returned, and the kingdom of the north as in a global understanding of preparing this final combat. Daniel is giving us the itinerary. And there is a kingdom of the north, there is a kingdom of the east, and there is a kingdom of the south. These, when you transfer this information, so then towards the time of the end of the age, you understand, because the giver of these is China, the kingdom of the east, and you find then obviously kingdom of the north, later coming with much equipment. You find then the Soviet Union is back for the purposes of protecting the trade of China. China is socialist. A lot of countries in the African continent are also socialist. And obviously the Soviet Union is socialist, though not as strong for the purpose of a military control and might as they were decades ago. But they are yet in terms of protecting the trade of China. And their sole objective is to get rid of the United States and its weakened system. So then, you find this particular newspaper section of these maneuvers, and the reason why these maneuvers are becoming bolder and bolder, it's because there is a system, as it was explained before. The Chinese system is coming, and the reason why it's coming and taking over the world via this internet trade. Try to understand, a layer of understanding of the prophecies is obviously directly related with trade. You find then in the hands of China, the trade then linked up with computers gives you a section of Daniel 12, and knowledge at the end shall increase. Not because the regular general knowledge would not increase. It is. But try to understand who Daniel was and what kind of knowledge he was speaking of. As you read, for instance, and the kingdom of the north shall come with much equipment. Was he talking about medical equipment? So when we read Daniel, we have to understand who was he? Was he then doing the work for the government in what capacity? He was doing trade. So obviously the layer related with these reflected prophecies related with the time of the restoration and the time of the end. So then we understand later on the third part of the ships related with merchant ships, trade. Then we start linking up these layers. So the reason why China and the Soviet Union, they are becoming bolder and bolder, it's because the system that started roughly a year and a half, 2 years ago, with Alibaba having the largest APO in the system, you understand then there is a link with it, and by the time the Chinese system then is ready to be launched, then you find a simple conversion from USD to the Chinese yen. And these systems are already uploaded. They are only waiting for the proper time. But as you read then the tensions going on in South China Sea, you understand that the involvement of the Soviet Union is to get rid of the United States from the waters. Because they want direct talks. If you read lots of these articles, direct talks means without United States influence. And the reason why they're becoming bolder, it's because there is a system that is ready to be launched, and then the Dragon Mart in Cancun, Mexico is obviously at its final completion for then the construction of this facility where then the Americas receives and sends Chinese products. And truly this is up to 5 times cheaper than buying United States. So as the time goes on, Daniel obviously becomes more and more stable. So then we can understand the time of the restoration period regarding then the tabernacle or tabernacling or temple, and also trade. So the layers explained was then tabernacling, trade, and the military. These are the main bulk of understanding. So then when we reach the restoration period and the Yom Kippur, then Daniel gives you step-by-step formation, and because of the system, then the Soviets at some point, they are going to take over the situation. In other words, they are going to be themselves policing the South China Sea. Thus then the quest of the Soviet Union, bit by bit, starting from China, and then reach many parts of the world. Now we find areas of this situation where you read the influence of the Soviet Union. You find then the trade of arms is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. And our economy becomes weakened, weaker and weaker and weaker. So there is no way around of these, because Daniel already stated that China, the kingdom of the East, is going to take over the trade of the world because of computerized systems. So the knowledge in terms of trade shall increase. Then you linked with Revelation or Galah, where then the merchants of the earth, because of the computerized systems led by China. Then you find the kingdom of the north coming with much equipment, because they already have dominated the area of arms and trade of arms. So truly what we are expecting at this point in time is the complete launch of this Chinese system, and then the state of China placing control over the trade because of reasons of taxes. People understand there is a lot of internet trade done, and a great portion of it they don't pay taxes. So the situation is very tense at the moment, and the Chinese government obviously is backing up Mr. Putin, and the United States was left aside, precisely as Daniel has stated regarding then a system that was then weakened, and the instructions are saying a system that was rejected. Now, not because rejected of people, is rejected as system-wide. So later on, I'm going to evaluate more of these, because there are sections of these instructions of Daniel that gives you a second transition. There is the first transition, and there is a second transition much later, where then you find in the system itself already in the hands of China. So evaluating these more later. So please stay tuned, much more coming.